No time like making a mistake to stop and start the live stream. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to part 4 of this Broken Time drumming live stream. I think we've just rolled over into 11:30, which is why you can see me now, and I was just having a little bit of a warm-up there, and I made a mistake, so perfect timing. First of all, apologies for last week. I did do Broken Time drumming number 4 last week, and for some reason was plagued by audio issues. It sounded crackling, and there was lots of crackling in the audio, and it was very low volume, so I've deleted it, and I will do it again today, so apologies for that. And as always, please let me know in the comments, in the chat, if I'm having any audio issues currently. I think I've solved it right now. So some housekeeping very, very quickly. As always, thank you very much to my Patreon subscribers. Your support is immensely appreciated. And the Broken Time drumming book that I've been banging on about has entered its final drafting stage and has actually gone to a number of proofreaders, and feedback is coming in thick and fast. So it is getting there. It is nearly there. Let me know if you might be interested in a pre-order, and I'll see if I can set that up. So these live streams are my chance to talk about the concepts in that Broken Time drumming book. And today is no different. I'm going to be exploring another main concept that I'm developing. And the sort of warm-up ideas I was playing around with when this live stream kicked in give you an idea of what I'm going to be talking about today. And that is applying these Broken Time ideas into a slightly different context. The eagle-eyed amongst you there, or the eagle-eared perhaps, may have spotted that I was no longer swinging. This was not a swung jazz pattern. This was a very straight approach. I'm not going to go out there and say that this is Latin or anything like that, because it's not, and that would not be a fair comparison. But I was applying this material, or exploring some ideas of this material, in a straight context. And as we shall see over the next half an hour or so, there's a lot we can do with these simple ideas to take them out of their original context and to apply them differently. And there might be a few fusion-esque applications we can explore as well. So let's crack on. As we know, the Broken Time drumming concept that I am developing is based around motifs and motivic development, right? So one of the common motifs I've talked about over the past few streams has been this 5-beat motif. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I've talked about this at great length. It is a 5-beat motif where all 4 limbs are engaged. We've got a ride cymbal pattern that is integrated into that motif, and the bass, snare, and hi-hat do this sort of comping arrangement that is all, hopefully, complementing each other to generate this theme, this idea, this motif, right? So we've talked about that. So taking that motif, we can start to straighten that out and take that out of its 8th note swing format and into a straight 8ths thing. And it sounds the same yet different, right? It gives us a slightly different time feel, a different context. It goes without saying that when we are practicing this material, we still need to be counting it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, etc. We're counting it in a 4 bars of 4/4 context. I've talked about this at great length. So let's keep this idea rolling. Let's see if we can start to put together a nice phrase that we can develop into a more sort of funk fusion context, but taking this Broken Time material. So we've started with a 5-beat motif, right? Let's add a 3 to the end of that. Yeah, that one's quite nice. So I'm purposefully doing this on the fly because I want to show you how we can develop these ideas in quite an exploratory manner. Let's take a 3. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. quite a sort of common 3-beat motif there. So as before, straighten it out. Count it in 4 bars of 4/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. And it's going to take 12 bars to resolve. And this is all part of the practicing. Anyway, let's combine that now with our 5-beat motif. So 2 odds make an even. 5 plus 3 makes an 8-note phrase. So if we combine our 5-beat motif with our 3-beat motif, we get 2 bars of 4/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. We've got a nice 2-bar phrase to work with. And of course, our first job is to become as comfortable with it as we can and start to hear these motifs working to create this larger phrase. I quite like that, actually. That flows quite nicely. And the 3 I chose, I think, fits in quite naturally with the 5. It's almost like a call and response type thing. It's quite nice. So let's assume that we've put in the practice time and we have become nice and comfortable and confident with this new 5/3 conversation. That's the terminology I'm using here, the 5 for the 5-beat motif and the 3 for the 3. So this is a 5/3 combination. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. And of course, we're feeling it as an 8-beat phrase. Because it's 2 bars long, we can start to explore using this to begin with as a sort of fill within a larger groove. So let's say we've got this sort of thing. Just a sort of nice loose groove. And there it was as a fill, right? Start to have a play with it in that sense, and we can start using it as a dedicated phrase within part of a larger context. Now I think 4 and 1 and 2 and yeah. Now I didn't actually intend to do that, but I'm applying this in double time here. As these motifs are written and as I have developed them, these are 8th notes. So this 5-beat phrase, 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, 5, is 5 quarter notes long, 5 crotchets long. The way I've just been applying it there in this straight time is essentially everything doubles. So those 8th notes become 16th notes. So despite what I intended, this has turned out into a 1-bar fill because everything has condensed down into 16th notes. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. Got to be aware of that, right? It creeps up on you. So that works quite nicely because that means it works as a 1-bar fill. So we're in a nice groove. 2, 3, 4, 3. Here comes the fill. So it works as a nice groove variation that you can use as part of a larger context, as I've been saying. Let's see what happens now. Let's see if we can apply it in a similar sort of way over here on the hi-hat. It's quite nice. One more. And that's got the nice byproduct of this open hi-hat creeping in, because some of the strokes in this motif are left foot hi-hat strokes. When we apply it over here on the hi-hat, they kind of manifest as this short, snappy, open hi-hat, which is quite nice. So this is our first step, right? We've taken our motif and we've taken it out of context, and we're starting to develop it as a smaller phrase within a larger groove. We can start to carry this approach on now, where rather than just thinking of different fills we can use, it becomes a groove. We are taking the same broken time groove time feel approach, and we're applying it in a straight eighths context. Which is what I was sort of playing around with when this stream kicks in. Now, of course, this requires you to have a relatively well-developed vocabulary already. Just because we are in straight eighths here doesn't mean we're using a completely different set of vocabulary. It just means we're applying the vocabulary we've already got in a different way. So I've just been exploring this 5-beat and this 3-beat idea, because that's a great way to demonstrate how we can apply this. But to improvise with this material, we of course need to have a much bigger pool of vocabulary, or a much deeper pool of vocabulary, right? We need to be able to toy with these phrases as we would if we were playing jazz time. So let me start to add in now a few other motifs. Let's add, I'm trying to keep this relatively small so that we can all keep on the same page here. Let's add a 7. Yeah. So the original 7 sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. One of my favorites, actually. I think that sounds really nice. So as before, we'll straighten that out. And then we can add that into our combination. So let's go 7, 5, 3. We'll begin the combination with the 7 this time. So now we're at an interesting point, because we have now arrived at, I believe, a 15-beat motif. 7 plus 5 plus 3 is indeed 15 beats long. So we've got this really interesting combination phrase that sounds nice, even in this new eighth note, straight eighth notes approach, but it's 15 beats long. So now we kind of have to decide, are we going to just repeat this 15-beat motif that's going to displace by 1 beat every time, or are we going to fill that 16th beat with something else? Let's try the first approach to begin with. So, of course, counting it through, we will find 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3. We've finished the phrase. If we start it again, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2. We've now got 2 beats left at the bar, because we're displacing the whole combination by 1 beat every time. Now, this can be really interesting. This can create a bit of a rhythmic illusion, because your listeners, and if you're not careful, you yourself, will hear the 15-beat phrase, and every repetition of that 15-beat phrase feels like the start of a new phrase in the time, but it's not. We've not completed our 4-bar measure. So you've really got to be careful to keep on top of this to follow the time, not the combination you're playing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. And by this point, we've displaced by a whole bar. Did you see I began the 7-beat phrase on the first beat of that 4th bar? This is a really, really interesting way to keep time. It's very prescribed. I'm not going to claim this is improvisational at this stage, of course not. But this is a really interesting way to keep time in a way that creates this sort of cross-rhythm illusion type effect. Very, very much does create a broken time feel because it's moving kind of backwards slowly through the time as you go along. I'd warn your bandmates about this if you're doing this as part of an actual song as opposed to an improvisation, just as a disclaimer, because it can be quite trippy to hear that displacement moving through the bar. Anyway, what I'm hoping you're starting to hear from all of this is how that these motifs can very much work in a straight eighths or a 16th note context. Now, something I've been trying to develop is that sort of approach where I'm applying this broken time material, but in a more sort of, I don't know what you'd call that, maybe a funk fusion, almost a drum and bass type context. Because of the nature of these motifs, we get what sounds like jazz phrasing, but disguised as a different style of music, right? Because I'm not just sitting there playing, because that's obviously a pattern. There's obviously a very definite pattern happening there. Whereas what I've started trying to develop, as I'm sort of demonstrating here, is taking that material and applying it into a different context, trying to keep the improvisational aspect going, where I'm sort of developing a motif and combining motifs and expanding it and everything. But in this different time field, this is no longer jazz, right? Maybe there's an argument that there's a contemporary jazz bent, depending on how you apply it. This is a sort of Eric Harland sort of approach. That's the sort of effect that you end up with. Now, as I say, this is definitely something that I am still developing and exploring, but it is really interesting, and it's a good challenge for me to see how this jazz material that I've been developing can be applied in other contexts. So what I was doing there was essentially the same methodology that I've just applied here. So I started with a simple motif. I think it was the 3. You hear that 3 in there, right? Started with this. Straighten it out. Apply it to the hi-hat, apply it as a sort of different groove. Now, starting with that motif triggers this sort of development inspiration, right? I don't want to get too heavily into the philosophy of improvising because it's beyond the scope of this video. But those of you that already try improvising may know that ideas breed ideas. I think the doorbell is just about to ring. Maybe not. Improvisation breeds improvisation. So if I start with this idea, there it is. I'm busy, sorry. If I start with that idea, it triggers the next idea. Okay, I've kind of got an idea in place there, so I can develop that idea. So all of those ideas that came after the original motif were sort of triggered by the playing of that original motif. And I am not, I'm not a rapper or anything like that, but I imagine the sort of improvisational rap freestyle type thing works in very much the same way, or maybe poetry as well, improvised poetry. You start with a simple idea and it breeds new ideas which you can then expand and develop. Now, this is far easier, if possible at all, from having a deep sense of vocabulary already. So if I didn't know anything except this 3-beat motif, I've not really got too many options on how to develop that. But let's say I triple my vocabulary, so I've got the 3, the 5, and the 7 that we've worked on today. it's vastly increased the wealth of material that I have to call on, because I don't just have to regurgitate those 3 motifs. I can develop the individual ideas of each motif. So if I come back over to the ride cymbal to hopefully show you with a little bit more clarity. If we take the 7, now something about this should sound familiar. Right? The end of the 7 is the 3. Right? So the 7 and the 3 are very much connected because the motifs have these shared sections within them. I hope you can hear what I'm talking about. Here's the 3 on its own. Here it is with the 3 beats, the 4 beats before it that make it a 7. Okay, so even with just these 2 ideas, the 3 and the 7, I can do an awful lot with that just by developing the ideas within. What can we do with the 5? So there's a 3 at the beginning of the 5 as well. I guess I'm feeling that 5 is a 3 and a 2. Yeah, the beginning of that 5 is quite a nice 3 as well. Yeah, that's quite nice because I don't need hundreds of motifs here. I was working with 3, and hopefully you were able to hear the 3 motifs I was working on, and you can develop individually the motifs within that. So your improvisation is limited, not with what you're able to do, but with your starting vocabulary. You're limiting yourself to just 3 motifs. And of course, we're talking about applying it in a different way here. But this improvisational concept, I think, applies to lots of different contexts. And when you are familiar with your vocabulary in that way, it is pretty trivial to change it to a different context. Yeah, that sounded nice. I can't really stress enough the importance of the word vocabulary here. I know it's a word that I like to toss around a lot, but your vocabulary is the material that you are physically and mentally capable of playing, right? You can't improvise with vocabulary you don't have. So it stands to reason, therefore, that if you are trying to improve your ability to improvise, you need to work on your vocabulary. And you need to work on your vocabulary in such a way that it is deep and familiar, and that you are able to combine it and manipulate it in ways which suit the improvisation you're trying to play. I don't have enough, I've not put enough hours in to something like Latin, traditional Latin drumming and traditional Latin percussion, for me to apply this to a Latin. I mean, I could fake it if we... But really, all I'm doing is applying a cross stick instead of a normal snare drum stroke. But the possibilities are there for you, for those of you that are really into the Latin style of things. The possibilities are there for you, but I don't pretend to be an expert at Latin drumming. It's just not on the list of things I do. But you can hopefully see the potential is there. You might be a heavy rock guy. You know, you love Dave Grohl and Travis Barker and these massive hitters, these big rock drummers. There is still something you could apply there. You know, if you've got this same sort of vocabulary, there is a way you could... I'm not going to try and do it because I'd be making a fool of myself, but the potential is there. So I'll wrap that up because I'm starting to ramble now. But what I hope to think about, what I hope for you guys to think about and this is what I'm developing, is that the vocabulary, once you've acquired it, can be applied and manipulated in any way you see fit, lots of different contexts. But for me specifically, that's the sort of thing that I'm trialing at the moment. I'm not saying I'm going to start going and playing like that in all my gigs or anything, but it's nice to see what this vocabulary allows you to do. So thank you for joining me today. I hope this has given you some ideas. I think that's it. I'm not going to waste your time anymore. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next time. I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys. Stay safe.